The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
It was the great Lee Trevino who made his way to the big time, hustling on municipal courses in West Texas, who said, pressure is when you play for $5 a hole and you got $2 in your pocket. Everything is relative. But the pressure release we saw as Rory McIlroy finally was able to win the Masters and relieve the pressure of going 11 years without a major when he was anointed at 21 to be the next. And it was just unbelievable to watch yesterday. Not a golfer, tried to play, didn't like to play the game, really only watched the majors. But I love drama, and the drama of sports, the human drama of athletic competition. What we saw on display yesterday in Augusta was absolutely stunning. This paragraph from Barry Zerluga's column in the Post today. Rory McIlroy lost the Masters on the first hole and on the 13th when he made his third and fourth double bogeys of the week. He lost it with the tentative putts for eagle at 15 and for a birdie at 16. He lost it with a meek 5-foot putt for par at the 18th, where his bogey dropped him into a playoff with Justin Rose. And then he won it. Finally, he won it. And, you know, you have to go back with him to realize this burden that he's carried. And the burden of expectation is sometimes incredibly heavy, and it was for him. Remember, in 2011, he was in position to win the Masters at the age of 21. At that point, we're already looking for the next Tiger. Remember, you know, Tiger's big flameout came in Thanksgiving weekend of 2009. So this is almost a couple of years later, and he's had some injuries, and we had the Rachel Yucatel stuff. And I mean, his career had basically blown up at this point. He was still a young player, but was it realistic to think that he could become Tiger Woods again? So we're looking for somebody new, and it looks like it's going to be Rory McIlroy at the Masters. He's got a 54-hole lead, shoots 37 on the front nine on Sunday, and then he had a triple bogey on 10, a double bogey on 12. He completely blew up, finished with an 80, 10 shots back in 15th place as Charles Schwartzel won the Masters. Remember that name? A forgotten name. But Rory McIlroy comes back, a couple months later, plays the U.S. Open here at Congressional, runs away with it, shoots 65, 6 under on the opening day, 16 under par, which I believe is still a record for the U.S. Open, and won it by 8. And you think, okay, giddy up, he's off and running. And by the time we get to August of 2014, he's won 5 majors. Hasn't won the Masters again yet, but it's only been a few years. And since August of 2014, he has yet to win a major. There have been times when he's been close, but he wasn't able to do it. And in this case, I mean, it's looking like with the triple bogey that he had on 13, and with the double bogey that he had on 13. And then, you know, a very, very makeable putt to win the tournament, he misses. And you go, okay, we've seen this movie. This is Greg Norman. This is Jean Van de Velde. This is the choke. And it's going to play out. It's going to be devastating, except that it isn't. And Justin Rose and Rory McIlroy, you know, line up for what's going to be a sudden death playoff. And on the first hole, his approach shot is brilliant, just a brilliant shot. Justin Rose, reasonable, misses his putt to go to birdie, pars, and then it's time for Rory to finally relieve that pressure that he's been carrying around for a decade, over a decade, 14 years, 11 years. And this is Mike Tirico. You saw the TV call, and Jim Nantz, being the pro that Jim Nantz is, he laid out, as they say in the TV business. He let the pictures do the talking. He let the crowd noise do the talking. But on radio, you don't have that luxury. So Mike Tirico doing it for Sirius XM gives you a sense, if you happen to be driving around in a car or whatever you're doing, not near a TV, giving you the word picture of this incredible moment, not just in golf, but in sports.
Rory back and through, and he's made it! He's done it! It's a Grand Slam roar at Augusta National. Rory McIlroy on his knees, bent down in emotion, clutching his head. He's won the Masters. He's won all the Grand Slam events. He's the 6th in the history of the game to enter golf's greatest group. A long hug with his longtime friend Harry Diamond, his caddy. A birdie at 18 for history. Goes over to Justin Rose. They shake hands and embrace. They all know what this means to Rory, one of the most popular and respected players, not just on tour, but around the world. Rose with another attaboy. Justin Rose has lost the Masters twice in a playoff. And for the second time, he has to leave the 18th green in disappointment. Gets a big cheer. Meantime, Rory with a hug for Fooch. Justin Rose's caddy, and now the emotion comes out. Throws his hat, 2 fists clenched, hands up to his head. And in disbelief, on his knees, hands on knees, with Harry Diamond, and the emotions start to come out from McIlroy.
A career Grand Slam, the company that he now keeps. Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, Ben Hogan, Gene Sarazen. That's it. That's the list. And as he said, for that display of emotion that Mike Tirico just described, he said it was all relief. There wasn't much joy in that reaction. It was all relief. And then the joy came pretty soon after that, when he finally had a chance to calm down after the green jacket ceremony where he got emotional, talking about his parents. He's an only child, the sacrifices they made for him to become one of the top golfers in the world. And he said that they were not there, but he would be getting together with them next week. It all came pouring out. And when he had a chance to compose himself, he gave kind of a sarcastic beginning to the opening of the news conference, kind of what are we going to do now, kids?
I'd like to start this press conference with a question myself. What are we all going to talk about next year? It's a dream come true. I've dreamt about that moment for as long as I can remember. I mentioned it out in the prize ceremony, but watching Tiger here in 1997 do what he did and winning his first green jacket, I think that inspired so many of my generation to want to emulate what he did. And there were points in my career where I didn't know if I would have this nice garment over my shoulders, but I didn't make it easy today. I certainly didn't make it easy. I was nervous. It was one of the toughest days I've ever had on the golf course. In a funny way, I feel like the double bogey at the first sort of settled my nerves. And it's funny, walking to the second tee, the first thing that popped into my head was John Rahm a couple of years ago making double and going on to win. So, at least my mind was in the right place and was at least thinking positively about it. But just a complete roller coaster of a day. It was very tricky out there. It almost felt more like a U.S. Open than a Masters at some points, just with how firm and fast the greens got. But just really proud of how I bounced back from from the double on 1, from the double on 13. I don't know if any Masters champions had 4 doubles during the week, but maybe I'm the first. But yeah, just a complete roller coaster of emotions today, and honestly, what came out of me on the last green there in the playoff was, at least 11 years, if not 14 years of pent up emotion. Since 2011, I think it's so ironic as well. I got to my locker this morning and I opened it up, and there was a note in there from Angel Cabrera, and just wishing me luck. And Angel Cabrera was the player I played with in the final day in 2011. So just a it was a nice touch and a little bit ironic at the same time. And it's been 14 long years, but thankfully I got the job done.
And how ironic is it that it's Angel Cabrera? That's one who went to jail. He's now free and was able to play in the Masters, but he was there as Rory had that epic collapse in 2011, and he's the one to give him a pat on the back, getting ready to go out yesterday in the final round. As for what he's been carrying these 11 years, and really if you count going back to 2011 at the Masters where he had the collapse, the burden of that, what you saw where he actually, convulsed on the course. He, not only bent down and was overcome by emotion, but you saw his body heave because of that. And he was quite honest about how much of a relief that actually was.
Tough. It's, you've had, Jack, Gary, Tom, Tiger, you name it, come through here and I'll say that I'll win the Masters one day. That's a hard load to carry, especially, it really is. And, these are idols of mine, and it's very flattering that they all come up here and they believe in me and they believe in my abilities to be able to, win this tournament and, achieve the Grand Slam and all that. But it doesn't help, I wish they didn't say it, but I think as well as the years have went on, I've just become more accustomed to the noise that sort of surrounds my whole Masters week, and I've become a little more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what we do not just in golf but in sports. We like to anoint people. And when Jack Nicklaus is asked about Tiger Woods, he says, "Oh yeah, he's going to run past the Masters and the ones that Arnold Palmer won easily, and he's going to break my record," and would have, without the personal issues that he had and the injuries and so forth. But, nobody's done it. And Rory's not going to do it because he's 35 years old. He's won 5. Means he's got to win 14 more to get past Jack. But he has now put himself among the greatest of all time when he's on a list that now includes Jack, and it includes Tiger and Gary Player and Ben Hogan and Gene Sarazen. Those are some of the greatest names in the history of golf. Phil Mickelson never won the Grand Slam. There have been, other great players over the years who have won majors, multiple majors, but not all 4. And Rory has done that. That's rarefied air. It was Jack who talked about, this was before he won yesterday, but talked about how he was, while he put the pressure on Rory very early on, talking about how he would win multiple Masters, he also was someone who reached out to Rory before this tournament began. And by the way, he is now, Rory, the only one so far to have won, getting 4 double bogeys during the course of the week. This is about a conversation that they had before the tournament began.
Sat down with Roy last week, and we had lunch, and we were talking, and I said, "Roy, I says, I know you prepared for Augusta. Tell me how you're going to play the golf course." And we went through it shot for shot, and we got done. He got done with the round. I didn't open my mouth, and I said, "Well, I wouldn't change a thing." I said, "That's exactly the way I would try to play the golf course." And the discipline to do that is what Roy has lacked, in my opinion. He's got all the shots. He's got all the game. He certainly is as talented as anybody in the game. But if you go back and see his history the last few years, he gets to a place, a lot of times all of a sudden an 8 or a 7 pops up, and that keeps him from getting to where he needs to go. I mean, I'm a big fan of Roy's, and I like Roy a lot, so that's what I think.
And that's exactly what happened with the double bogey yesterday on 13, but he was able to overcome missing a couple of short putts that would have cinched it, including the one on 18. And here's Justin Rose. Justin Rose getting out in front early. He's had his share of disappointment at the Masters, and seemingly he's out of it yesterday. And he has a late charge, gets to finish at 10 under par. And you see him out on the range kind of loosening up, in case there is a playoff, but you think, okay, Rory's got it back under control. He's got a 5-foot putt to win the Masters. It's all going to be over right here, and there's not going to be a playoff. And then, boom, there's a playoff. And, that can go two ways. He's got the momentum of continuing to play while Rose has been sitting out for half an hour, 45 minutes, waiting for the tournament to finish up in regulation. On the other hand, Rose's mind is clear. He's playing with house money. He didn't expect to be in a playoff, and the great burden is on Rory once again. But in the big moment that counted, he came through. And, it's something about golf that I think all of us can relate to, whether we play or whether we don't. And it's the only sport where a weekend guy can hit a shot as well as Rory hits one, as well as Tiger has ever hit one. Maybe not a 300-yard drive, but maybe they can, make a putt easily from 5 feet out. But it's the pressure that gets to them. And we don't understand that. And that's really what this is all about, which leaves this statement, and this is going to be the wrap-up here for the Masters for me. The people far more knowledgeable about golf can tell you all about it today. But Bryson DeChambeau, who was in the last pairing with Rory and finished out of the top 5, I believe, did not have a good day yesterday. Didn't need to say this, but felt that it was his obligation to say this for some reason.
Did you speak to him in there? How's he doing? Do you know?
No idea. Didn't talk to me once all day.
Did you try and initiate conversation with Rory at all?
He wouldn't talk to me.
He didn't have to. This is not, the member guest. This is the freaking Masters. He's trying to win. You don't have chatty conversations. You don't let a guy get inside your head who you're competing with. Yeah, just shut up. You didn't need to rain on the parade like that. So, you look at the final day and go, who do I root for? There's the colorless Scotty Scheffler, defending champion. Okay, maybe he's going to win again, but he's dull as dishwater. Rory's a compelling figure, especially with the burden he's been carrying for over a decade. DeChambeau is the guy used to be, pumped up like a linebacker. Now he sort of looks like a safety, and hits it a mile. But just shut up. You don't need to say that. Have a little bit more class than that. It makes Rory seem small. And he came up as big as you could possibly be in that moment. All right, coming up, could this be the tipping point for college athletics? Very bizarre scene playing out over the weekend in Knoxville as a Tennessee quarterback checks out right before the spring game. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630.
Poland Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
In about an hour, we'll get to the great story of Brent Musberger finally making the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He will get the Pete Rozelle Radio and Television Award next summer. I believe it's early August when the Hall of Fame ceremonies take place in Canton. And finally got in because Dan Patrick found out, wait a minute, he's not in the Hall of Fame? Chris Berman got in some years ago. Not that Berman doesn't deserve to be there, but getting in before Brent Musberger, are you kidding me? So Dan actually wrote a letter to the Hall of Fame, and that got the wheels in motion. And last week, Musberger was notified that he made it, and it's a long conversation. I don't usually play something this long, but it's about 13 minutes, and I will play it in about an hour. And it's just great. It's Brent telling stories. If you're of an age where you remember the NFL Today with Phyllis and Irv and the Greek, and, of course, Brent running the whole show, the great anchor that he was and is. It's just wonderful to hear those stories, and we'll do that in about an hour. Meantime, got some really bizarre happening in college football or college sports in general with, the way things are playing out with what we saw with Kevin Willard here. Who leaves a team after you make the Sweet 16? That's the new state of the game. He wasn't getting the money that he wanted at Maryland. Did he handle it poorly? Absolutely. Was he okay to do that? Yeah. I mean, that's the system. It allows that. And now we've had the first player holdout, it appears. Now, maybe there have been others in the past. We haven't heard about it, but this was a public holdout. And it was the Tennessee quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. You probably have never heard of him. He was good, not great for Tennessee last year. They finished, at least in statistics, in the middle of the pack in the SEC. And he was due to make $2.4 million this year on it's called a contract. I don't know if it's a written document. It doesn't hold up in court. It doesn't seem to be worth a whole lot. It was an $8 million deal when he signed. He was a redshirt freshman this year, so it was his second year at Tennessee. But he started receiving payments when he was in high school and had it all played out. It's got 3 years left. It was about $10 million. $10 million can set you up pretty well for life, whether you make the NFL or not. And $2.4 million for a college quarterback is pretty good money, I would think. But you're hearing stories of quarterbacks getting, $6 million to go here. I think that the new Miami quarterback who used to be at Georgia is getting 5 or 6 or something like that. So he and his dad decide, oh, no, we're getting ripped off here. And so we need to renegotiate. And we're going to give you a good deal. We're hearing stories of quarterbacks getting 5 and 6. Well, we're going to ask you for $4 million. Tennessee goes, no, we are due to pay you 2.4. That seems fair. If you didn't notice, we didn't win the national championship last year. And his numbers, they were 10-3. They were in the college football playoff. He threw for 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, completed 63% of his passes. Pretty good, right? Their offense finished 9 in the 16-team SEC in scoring offense last year. And he was the conference's number 10 quarterback in passing yards per game. True definition of middle of the pack here. But, he's figuring I got a team that I took to the playoffs last year. They really got to have me. And the difference of $1.6 million probably isn't a lot to them. It's a lot to me. So, let's come up with the bucks. And Iamaleava notified offensive coordinator Joey Hazael late Friday that he was in the process of filling out his paperwork and planned to enter the transfer portal when it opens on Wednesday, according to ESPN. He missed meetings and practices on Friday, and then he skipped the spring game, which took place on Saturday. And after it was over, the coach of Tennessee, Josh Heupel, said, okay, we're moving on.
Today's landscape of college football, it's different than what it has been. It's unfortunate, just the situation and where we're at with Nico. I want to thank him for everything that he's done since he's gotten here. That's as a recruit to who he was as a player. And how he competed inside of the building. And so a great appreciation for that side of it. Obviously, we're moving forward as a program without him. I said it to the guys today. There's no one that's bigger than the Power T, and that includes me. And they hear me say that a lot inside of that team room. This program's been around for a long time, with a lot of great coaches, a lot of great players that came before that laid the cornerstone pieces, the legacy, the tradition that is Tennessee football. It's going to be around a long time after I'm done and after they're gone. And that's what's special about being here, is that there is a legacy and a tradition that is so rich, and a logo that's recognized not just across the nation but across the world too. And today you got a chance to see 110 guys that ran out and competed their butts off, that give their all for Tennessee and do it the right way. And really proud of the spring that they've had, but also how they culminated it as well.
So the message from the head coach, Nico, you're good, but we're Tennessee, Nico. We can make more. We're going to be okay. Now, the timing of this is terrible for Nico Iamaleava. The time to do this would have been when the transfer portal opened last winter. It's an odd thing that it opens during the playoff. It's just more insanity about college sports these days. But I guess he wasn't able to make the deal that he wanted to make. There was a report that his representatives, quickly this is ramped up. From improper benefits, which used to be cream cheese on a bagel, is now at the point where players have representatives who reach out to schools and see what kind of deal they can make. He's from California. They wanted to make a deal with Oregon, but Oregon wasn't apparently interested. So his bargaining power, not that great, and he can't go anywhere in the SEC. That's a new rule now. He can't just go from one SEC school to another. That's a lot of schools now. I think it's 18 schools in the SEC. So the timing wasn't great, and Heupel, kind of acknowledged that on Saturday.
If it's going to happen, rip the Band-Aid too. At the end of the day, we got a lot of great work for the two guys that are here, and we got a chance to move forward as a program. So it's unfortunate, just in the landscape of college football that this happens at this point. But, I told our coaches yesterday afternoon when we had a staff meeting, I said, if it's going to happen, and sometimes it happens through injury, game 5, game 6. I've had it in my career where I lost starting quarterback before we started training camp, the day of the start of training camp. And at the end of the day, this is the greatest team game there is. And, that group where we lost them on day 1, they rallied together. Adversity, when it strikes, you got 2 choices. It can bring you together or divide you. That group came together and ultimately went on and won a conference championship that year. And this group inside of that locker room, they're tough, they're competitive, they care about each other, and we got to grow together.
Yeah, so that's Tennessee football. This isn't one player at a basketball program that can make or break the program. As he said, it's a team game. And he could have, it's conceivable, the first day of practice, Nico could have torn his ACL, would have been out for the year. So he's kind of got to look at it. Next man up, right? That's always the mantra of football, no matter what level you're at. That's why they have 100 guys on the team, because if somebody gets hurt, somebody steps in, and they're ready to move on. Now, what does this mean in the larger picture for college sports? Paul Feinbaum, kind of the guru of the SEC, does the talk show on ESPN largely centered around SEC football. He was on over the weekend, and this was actually before the spring game. But here's his look at this and what this means going forward.
It is the right call, and it's the right call because they've already been held hostage to a degree by Nico and his people. They went to bat for him about a year ago. They fought the NCAA, who wanted to rule him ineligible because of the recruiting. And they stood by and they kept his eligibility. They gave him a chance. And by the way, he helped to reward them by helping Tennessee get to the playoffs last year. But the bigger story here is beyond Nico. This is an inflection point in the history of college football. This is the first time in this NIL era that we have had a literal holdout. Happens every day in the NFL. It's never happened in college football. He was expected to make about $2.5 million, and while people are seeing their 401s crash right now, he wanted more than that, reportedly as much as $4 million. And Tennessee finally said, you know what, we're done. What's interesting is he's not that great. I talked to various sources around the SEC yesterday, and I said, tell me where he ranks out of the 16 quarterbacks in the SEC. They said somewhere between 6 and 8. Tennessee saw the same thing, and that's why he is no longer on the Tennessee roster this morning.
Gotta love Paul Feinbaum, always keeping it real. But now you look at this story, and I am certain that the next place that he wants to go is going to look at it as well. What are Nico's best options when the portal does open next week?
Well, he grew up in California, so you have to look to that direction. One interesting part of this is he can't go anywhere within the SEC. There is a new clause in the spring portal. You can't go within the SEC. Now, you can do that in the portal that ends after the season. So I would have to guess the West Coast. Obviously, there's plenty of places out there, Oregon, USC, natural places. But I wonder, Shay, how excited our school is going to be to deal with his representatives. And I say his representatives. His father's involved. He's got agents involved. This is a very nasty situation. It has left a stench across college football. So I would say buyer beware.
That's Paul Feinbaum Saturday morning. Now, again, the reporting later on is that they had reached out to Oregon, and Oregon wasn't interested. And it's, the game of musical chairs now. You're late in the game. Teams have had their spring games. They're ready for the fall practices to begin and the depth charts and who's going to be the starting quarterback. Do you bring him in now? I guess you could if you want him bad enough. But, again, kind of a middle-of-the-pack quarterback in the SEC on a really good team, didn't have mind-blowing stats, and played a game of chicken with the school, and the school said, forget it. We're moving on without you. And when Paul Feinbaum says essentially this is the tipping point in college sports, we may look back on this and say, yeah, can you believe it? We had a quarterback who was just okay, who held out and managed to get himself out of the school. And, who knows who he's going to be playing for in the fall. Is he going to be able to even reach the $2.4 million that he got from Tennessee, or is he so good and teams are so desperate for quarterbacks they'll pay whatever it takes to get him? We've said this over and over and over again. What has to happen is you got to turn this into real professional sports. The NCAA is hanging on to this notion that these are student athletes. They are not student athletes. They jump from school to school to school. Nobody's keeping track of what they used to call the APR, the academic progress rate, which the NCAA used to use for, I don't know how they were adjudicating this, but Maryland was under some pressure when Gary Williams was coaching at Maryland because guys were going to the NBA, or they hadn't quite completed their degrees when they went off to play professional basketball. He said you would too if you got a six-figure deal, or in some cases a seven-figure deal right out of college, and you hadn't graduated yet. You would do it. You got to seize that moment. Well, now forget it. They're not doing anything like that. So call it what it is. It's professional sports. It's professional basketball. It's professional football. Have 2-year contracts, which have buyouts in them. Like in this case, if Nico wanted to leave, fine. He'd have to pay a buyout to leave. If Tennessee said, we're through with you, and he didn't want to leave, they buy him out. They pay it. Then at the end of 2 years, just like a regular job, you get renewed. I've had a series of 2-year contracts over the years. At the end of it, the station decides whether they want me back or not. If they do, we negotiate a new deal. And if they don't, you leave. And that's happened to me several times in my career. It's just the fact of life. And, what this is just anarchy. It's just craziness. And here's a guy who has a contract and decides he's going to be a holdout, and the school says, forget it. Just get out. And, that's probably going to lead us into what the NCAA doesn't want to admit what it is. It's professional sports, and the academics are such a secondary part of this because, again, we've been saying this for decades and decades. Players don't go to a school for school. They go there for the sport. And if it was all about the school and they were, let's say, a basketball player and there's a lab on a Tuesday night and there's a conference game on a Tuesday night, you don't go to the lab. You would if you're a student, but if you're a student athlete, which they put athlete second, no, you're an athlete. You're on scholarship, academic scholarship, so that you can play the sport. That's how that works. So let's stop the hypocrisy. Let's call it what it is. There's billions of dollars coming into college sports from television and other sources, and the coaches are getting rich. They, in some cases, have $10 million contracts. Pay the players, do it just like it is in professional sports, 2-year deals, buyouts, contract renewals. Let's say a player has a couple of good years and maybe is hurt in one of them, doesn't want to sign a 2-year deal. Fine, sign a 1-year deal. But, have some certainty here other than the ability to hop from school to school to school. And you even have now in college basketball where a player can go to a high-level school and it doesn't work out. Let's say it's a Maryland level. He can go to George Mason or AU for a year, become the leading scorer for the team, and then come back to either Maryland or go someplace else big. Use it for what it is. And it's entertainment for us. It's television programming. That's really what it is. And the seat revenue is becoming less and less significant. I mean, it's a great atmosphere when Xfinity Center is sold out and people are wild like it was for the Michigan State game. But the money's from television. And the reason that Maryland's in the Big Ten is because of television. They wanted the Baltimore-Washington market for the TV size. It's the 4th biggest market when you combine Baltimore and D.C., and that's why they became a Big Ten school. So money is what drives the bus. Call it what it is. Stop pretending it's something else. And maybe this is the tipping point where you have a starting quarterback on a contract who decides he wants to hold out, and the school says, forget it, get out. All right, coming up, Brent Musberger on the Dan Patrick Show on finally getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So next week before the draft gets underway, we will replay a conversation that I had with Mel Kiper on Friday, of course, about the draft. And I said to him at the end of it, I said, you need to be in the Hall of Fame as a contributor. It's an award that is called the Pete Rozelle Award. Chris Berman won it a number of years ago. There are others who have received it over the years. Chris Mortensen, I think, has received that. And I said, as a contributor, you look at the draft. The draft is going to be held in Green Bay. It's going to look like Woodstock. There are going to be millions of people there. It's an enormous thing. And it started out where Chet Simmons, the head of ESPN, went to Pete Rozelle in 1980 and said, we'd like to televise the draft. And Rozelle said, who would watch it? Well, now it gets monster television ratings. It's on 3 nights or 2 nights of prime time. It finishes up on a Saturday. People watch the draft. They love the draft. And Mel's had a lot to do with it. He wasn't the first to analyze the draft, but he took it to a new level. And so did Brent Musberger in the pregame show. There were pregame shows for the NFL before Brent Musburger started the NFL Today in 1975. There had been like 15-minute shows that were done. I think there may have even been a half-hour show that was done on CBS, but it was nothing like what he and others helped to create. And it was groundbreaking. You had a woman, Phyllis George. No woman had ever been a football analyst before. Jimmy the Greek, a gambler, although you weren't allowed to talk about point spreads. It made it kind of odd. And then Irv Cross, former player with the with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was the first African American to be part of a crew in a pregame show, and it is the show that set the stage for all the pregame shows that we have now. So a couple of years ago, Dan Patrick at the Super Bowl came to the realization: wait a minute, Brent Musburger's not in the Hall of Fame. We got to get him in the Hall of Fame, and he set out to do it, talking about it on his show, and he wrote a letter to the Hall of Fame explaining why Brent Musburger should be in, and finally last week, something that was long overdue happened. Brent Musburger got in the Hall of Fame, and on Friday talked to Dan about how he found out about it.
I was honestly just brushing my teeth and my phone rang, and I looked down and it said NFL Hall of Fame. And I said, well, I wonder what that, and so I said, hello, Brent, Coach Vermeil. And I'm saying, yeah, Coach, I said, this is not your cell phone. This is a different phone. He said, congratulations. You're the winner of the Pete Rozelle Award. And it was, mind-blowing. I said, listen, Dan Patrick, Jim Nantz, and you, Coach, you're the ones who put this forward. And I owe you a debt of gratitude. It was great moments. I just wish, Dan, Irv Cross, Phyllis George, Jimmy the Greek, I wish they were still with us to share in this, because they meant so much to the NFL today, and actually the start of my career. So, again, thank you so much for your platform.
Well, you gave me almost an opportunity to dream, because when I watched you do your show, when the NFL Today, I remember watching and saying, I can do that. I'm not a play-by-play guy. I can do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't know if I'd ever get a chance to do that, but it's the first time in my broadcasting career, or like the beginning of it, that I had a direction, and you gave me that direction, and you provided a soundtrack for people's lives for 50 years. And that's the staying power is remarkable, but I thank you, because you made it look like you can do you and Costas, Bryant Gumbel, guys who are really good, they make a hard job look easy. And that's why there's a lot of people who want to do this job. And you did that. It's not easy, but you provided that soundtrack, and I'm forever grateful for that.
I'm so appreciative to hear that. And so many youngsters through the years, Dan, have come up and said, I really want to get into sportscasting. I love what you do. And I would spend some time and talk them through it. But you touch a lot of lives. And I was asked yesterday, anybody ever get upset with you? And I chuckled and I said, occasionally I would get a letter, a little nasty, from a preacher somewhere who said that I was spoiling church attendance on Sunday.
Did you get any negative feedback, when you were saying you were looking live?
No, it's interesting. No, everybody sort of gravitated to it without knowing how it started. And it started because my director, Bob Fishman, who's a Hall of Fame director, by the way, he, at a meeting of the NFL Today once early in the week, said that his father had a friend who loved to bet over-unders. And we were coming into November, and he wanted the weather at the various stadiums where we were going. And we didn't have enough time. Remember, the NFL Today was a half-hour show. Now those pregame shows go on for days. But so I said, we can't do a weather report. But I said, Bob, what if you give me a live picture? And we start. I think the first one down might have been Soldier Field in Chicago, because I know it was in November, and so we used "You Are Looking Live," and it was kind of a drizzly, gloomy day at the lakefront in Chicago, and so the next week at the meeting, Bob said, "Hey, my father's friend really loved that. He thought that was great," and so we went from there to 2-3 different stadiums that we could flash around the country, and so it became the trademark. And honestly, the only thing I ever insisted, and Bob followed, I said it has to be live. I said we can't tape stadium pictures and make this up. If I say You Are Looking Live, let's do it. So it went from there. And but no, I never received. I don't remember Pete Rozelle, who was a good friend of the shows. He would come by. 2 or 3 times a year when he wasn't on the road watching games. But I don't remember Pete ever asking me specifically about You Are Looking Live. It just became the trademark of the show. That's how we opened.
But you were kind of dancing around gambling without.
Oh yes. And but remember now, Jimmy, we weren't dancing. Okay, we were hugging. I mean, when Bob Wessler called me before year 2 of the NFL Today, and he said, "Brent, do you know a gambler by the name of Jimmy the Greek?" And I did, because when I was covering baseball, I would stop off in Las Vegas, and I had met the Greek. I knew him. And he said, I want to put him on the NFL Today to talk about the games. And I said, Bob, that's fine, but what are we going to do with Commissioner Rozelle? And of course, that led to the famous meeting that we had for about an hour down the Park Avenue NFL offices. And Rozelle could not have been more favorable to what the Greek being on the show. And then when we got to leave to go back, the commissioner said, "Oh, by the way, listen, guys, do me a favor. Now, when you were at a meeting with the commissioner," and he says, "favor," we knew here came the marching order. And he said, "Please don't use -3, +7, -10 on the segment." Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You got it. Never even thought about it. Walk out and say, "How we can talk about games if we can't use the point spreads?" Okay. So that led to the famous checkboard with the Greek, and people would figure out if the checks were all on one team's side, he meant cover the spread. So we went from there. And the only time I got in trouble after the NFC, we were doing the NFC on CBS then, was after the NFC Championship game. The Greek would always slip me a piece of paper with the spread on the Super Bowl, and I would always give it, and I'd always get the phone call on Monday, "Don't you ever do that again." "Oh, gee, I'm sorry, I forgot."
Until the next year when you forgot again.
Exactly. Yeah, I always knew. Honestly, if you go back to the founding of the National Football League, I mean, there were people involved with Cam. Art Rooney. He gets his stake in the Pittsburgh Steelers by winning at the horse track. And even Pete Rozelle. Every time I went to the Kentucky Derby, Pete Rozelle was there, usually with Wellington Mara, the owner of the Giants. So I knew, and the underground was just full of people who liked to bet on the National Football League. And I'm glad that it's now legal. And obviously, you have to be careful, because a gambling addiction is like an alcohol addiction. You got to be careful. You got to watch people. And I try to tell youngsters all the time, you're not going to beat it. I said, you may think you are, but you're not. I said, if you want to do it for recreation, as I do, I said, go ahead and enjoy it.
If I would have told you 1975, "Hey, Brent, you're going to be a Hall of Famer, and gambling is going to be embraced by all sports. What would you have thought that we have gotten to this point that gambling is now commonplace? It's almost like you're guilted in if you don't gamble on things.
I would have thought you were crazy. Okay, to tell you the truth, both instances, the guy never got into this, dreaming about Hall of Fames. I went to Canton early in the NFL career to shoot a segment for it, but I never dreamed about going in. And the gambling, I guess I always thought it had a chance to be legal, but I didn't realize how sports were going to embrace it. And you're so right. I talk to people all the time. I mean, think about ESPN, which did not exist when the NFL Today started. I mean, we didn't have cable television like we have it. If you go up, I was watching last night, like a lot of people I watch, and the bottom line, there were NBA spreads and over-unders were coming under. And I always smile when I see it because that was so verboten back in the 70s. And now it's just part of the culture. And I think, Dan, that's a good thing because I think it'll just kind of be accepted and go on its own way down the road, to tell you the truth.
I was wondering if you could get Joe Namath to introduce you at the Hall of Fame. Since,
man, Joe.
I mean, you were there when he made his big proclamation.
Oh, yeah.
And that they were going to win Super Bowl III.
Yeah, it's great. It was, you were talking about stadiums.
Yeah.
And the old Orange Bowl, I think for me, the stadiums always stand out where I have memories of what happened there. Okay. And Super Bowl III was really something because earlier in that week, we'd gone to Fort Lauderdale and the bellman told us that Joe Namath was out back, and there were a handful of us. I was a writer then, and I also worked at BBM, the CBS radio station. And we went out back, and there was Joe in a lounge chair, that famous picture with, there was a lady behind him getting an autograph, and people came up and wished him good luck. And I tell people it wasn't braggadocio. It wasn't like, oh, I guarantee it was just kind of matter of fact. And we're going to win the game. I guarantee it. And it was just kind of thrown out there. I tell you the truth, it did not become a big story until after the fact. Dave Anderson, great columnist in the New York Times, was with me at a country club that Joe spoke at, believe it or not, on Friday night. He was a guest of honor. And he repeated it. And it was Dave and it was such a small story in the Times. And now it has become bigger than life. But as for the game itself, okay, I was upstairs. I had a press pass, but I was in the photographer's box. But guess who was next to me? Howard Cosell, giving me the play-by-play of the. I was the one-man audience for Howard Cosell at Super Bowl III, and of course, he hated the NFC because the NFC would not allow it, and he loved the AFL. That was his dream. So he was so proud of Joe Willie Namath. I'll tell you, he called me Mush. I think he called Mush. I'll tell you, he's the best. So,
but that's one of the iconic moments in NFL history. Like when you think about it, what it became. Then you had guys who started to guarantee things. Then it became almost like commonplace where somebody was like, hey, we're going to win. Do you guarantee it? Yeah, I guarantee it. It was in the footsteps of Joe Willie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I tell you, Dan, that game to me meant more to the merger than anything. Now, Al Davis meant a lot to the merger because he started signing quarterbacks who were in the NFL. And when the George Hallases of the world saw what it was going to cost them, they also made a move toward merging. But once Joe Namath, remember now, the Greek and Las Vegas made the Baltimore Colts an 18-point favorite. 18-point favorite in that game. I mean, let that sink in right now with everybody.
Who did you have?
I did not bet the game. I don't think I I always thought the Colts were going to win. Listen, I was a Bears guy. Okay, I mean, I covered them and knew the Hallises. I kind of looked down a little bit at the AFL. You know, I was kind of one of the establishment reporters back in the day, and so I really thought the Colts were going to win. I don't think I would have given 18 points, but as it turns out, the bet of the year would have been on Joe Willie Namath and the Jets, my friend.
That's Brent Musberger on the Dan Patrick Show, and thanks to the efforts, large part, in part, what Dan did, Brent Musberger is going to go into the Hall of Fame this summer, and he should be there. Should have been there a long time ago, but now in his 80s, he's finally going to get there. If you missed this broke, I guess, Friday afternoon, that the Commanders are bringing in another quarterback, and man, you talk about this career. This would be a great 30 for 30. They may have even done one on him. I think there have been some lengthy features done on Josh Johnson, who's been, I mean, you talk about everywhere. He has been with a record 14 NFL teams, 5 multiple times, including this one. Remember, he was here in 2018 when Alex Smith broke his leg. There are only 3 players left on the team from that time. That's Tressway, the punter, defensive tackle Deron Payne, and safety Jeremy Reeves. Ryan Kerrigan's still with the team, but now he's a coach. So he's back. 14 teams, 5 multiple times. He's played in both the XFL in 2020, the United Football League in 2012, and it's the 25th time coming to Washington, 25th time that he has changed teams. He is 39 years old, or will be next month, and you just look at everywhere. I'd love to ask him what the procedure is as he goes from team to team. Does he rent a place? Does he just stay in a hotel? He has started 1 game since he left here in 2018, threw for 304 yards and 2 touchdowns in place of Lamar Jackson in a loss to Cincinnati at the end of the 2021 season, but spent time with 5 franchises in that time, just since he left here in 2018. Signed with San Francisco. Remember, he was in that championship game against Philadelphia where Brock Purdy suffered the elbow ligament injury, and then Johnson got knocked out with a concussion, and it left Purdy to just hand off. That's why the league, by the way, went back to the emergency quarterback. If the 49ers would have had an emergency quarterback, I don't know if they'd have won the game, but at least it would have been better than just having Brock Purdy hand off because he couldn't throw the football. And Johnson said, he had a conference call with reporters on Friday. He said, I saw the opportunity to win here. I saw an opportunity to continue to get better and be a part of a system that is exciting and looks fun on tape. So it looks like that's going to be as they say, the quarterback room. Jaden Daniels, obviously the starter. Marcus Mariota is coming back as the backup. And they have a well-traveled third stringer in Josh Johnson. That's, assuming that he makes the team. And I don't think there's any guaranteed money there, but I think they'd like to have a couple of old heads around behind Jaden Daniels. And here's a guy who's seen everything, absolutely been everywhere, including several times twice. So now he's back here. 14 different NFL teams, 4 different leagues. It's absolutely remarkable.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We got Bram coming up at 11 o'clock. When we talk about CTE, we're generally in sports talking about football. The movie Concussion, which came out probably 10 years ago, brought new attention to that. There have been multiple players who played in the NFL who have been diagnosed with CTE by this center at Boston University, which has been investigating this over the years. But there have been a number of hockey players that have been they found they've had CTE. It can't be fully diagnosed until the person has passed away. Sometimes you have some indication of that by the way they behave and so forth, but you can't really get scientific proof until they do an autopsy on the brain. And there have been a number of star players they found CTE in, including Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita, and I believe Gordie Howe. They also believe had some CTE. And you remember Chris Simon. Chris Simon was an enforcer with the Caps back in the days. He won a Stanley Cup. I don't think he was on the team in 2018. But sadly, last year, Chris Simon died by suicide at the age of 52. Not surprisingly, according to Chris Nowinski, who's a doctor at the Boston University Center, he was diagnosed with stage 3 CTE. And hockey players have long worn helmets. One of the last players not to wear a helmet was he was here. But anyway, the players back in the day didn't wear helmets. Gordie Howe didn't wear a helmet. Stan Mikita didn't wear a helmet. Chris Simon wore a helmet, and his job was to be an enforcer for the Capitals and other teams that he played with. And he had some ugly incidents over the years. There was even a racial slur that he dropped over time. I don't know if it was related to this, but these are things that you have to be concerned about. I believe Mark Rippon had a cousin who also committed suicide and was diagnosed with CTE, was an enforcer in the NHL. And it's just a sad dose of reality that comes along with it. Now, the NFL has gone out of its way to tell everybody how safe it is. This is one of the things they're talking about with the tush push, though there's really no evidence that causes injury more than any other play. And I would say this, from what I know about watching football over the years, the big concussion, brain-rattling hits happen in the open field. When you're close in like that, you may suffer some injuries, but I don't know if they're necessarily head or neck injuries. I don't know, but that they don't really have any concrete evidence that they're showing us here. They're just talking about it anecdotally. But you've also had cases of football players who have been diagnosed with CTE at a much younger age. There was a player, 10, 12 years ago who passed away at the age of, 21, 22. He was a captain at an Ivy League school. He'd played 3 years of Ivy League football and 4 years of high school, and he had CTE. It's not like, some of these guys who play 17, 18, 20 years in the case of Junior Seau and committed suicide. It's one of those things you have to worry about, and I don't know if there's CTE involved in this, but we had another tragedy over the weekend. LSU receiver Kyron Lacey, expected to be drafted in the draft next week, found dead in Houston, died of an apparent suicide after his car was pursued by authorities. According to the police, they responded to a call from a female family member who said Lacey had shot off a gun into the ground during a verbal argument, then jumped in his car, and they chased him. The car crashed, but that's apparently not what killed him. They say he died from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, again, I don't know if CTE is involved in this, but this has all the signs of that. Lacey's father, Kenny Lacey, put out a statement urging parents to check on their children's mental health. He says, "Our lives have changed forever, and this will never be okay, but God needed my baby more than he was needed here." God, this is heartbreaking. "This has to be the biggest pill our family has ever had to swallow, but I know our love and compassion in our families will get us through there." He had actually been accused back in December of causing a crash that killed a 78-year-old man and then fled the scene without calling authorities. He turned himself into authorities on January 12th, was released on bail, and he has been charged with negligent homicide, felony hit and run, and a grand jury case was supposed to start today. Maybe that was related to that, whatever. But he did not play in the bowl game that they had against a Baylor in the Texas Bowl. Played 3 years at LSU, and just a horrible tragedy, dead at the age of 24. Caleb Williams, speaking about something that's, it's interesting. Caleb Williams is now talking about the Hail Mary play, and this was an interview that he did with a magazine, Esquire magazine. And that was the play. You talk about a play that sent two teams in opposite directions. The Bears were coming off a bye week. They had won a game in London, and they looked like they were, a team that could really go places this year with the number one pick in Caleb Williams. And Jaden Daniels had been terrific, but remember, he had been hurt the previous week in the Carolina game with a rib injury, and it wasn't until couple hours before kickoff on Sunday that he was cleared to play. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And it turned out to be a, kind of a back and forth game. Bears made some mistakes, but the Bears went ahead with 27 seconds to go. And that's when that set up what was the play of the season for the Commanders, the Hail Mary from Jaden Daniels to Noah Brown. And now Caleb Williams, kind of pointing fingers at Matt Eberflus. Now's not really the time to do it. Eberflus has been fired, and he said that after the game, Eberflus denied the importance of the Hail Mary and seemed to chalk up the game to execution, seemingly pointing the fingers at the players on the team. And he said that annoyed guys in the locker room. It really ramped up on that Thanksgiving loss to the Lions when he totally mishandled the clock and he got fired a couple of days later. Williams said he was beat up mentally and physically and spiritually by the defeats this year, but he said he's glad he went through them as he gets ready for his second season. I think those losses were pretty important to me for my growth. I'm going to work my tail off to never be in that situation again. So it's not an explosive thing, but at this point, you got to take some of the blame for that. Could have played a better overall game, but really, it was so bad in the way they handled that. They not only allowed the Hail Mary, but they allowed 2 quick passes to set that up. Washington didn't have any timeouts, and the real GOAT of that game, and GOAT, I mean in a negative way, it's used in a positive way these days, but the GOAT of this game was Tyreek Stevenson, who instead of being back there covering Noah Brown like he was supposed to be, he was over on the sidelines taunting the fans like the game was over, and then he runs back at the last minute. He's not in position to cover Noah Brown in the back of the end zone. He's the one that actually tips the pass up in the air. Noah Brown gathers it in. Washington gets the win. They go one way to the NFC Championship game, and the Chicago Bears go another way with a horribly disappointing season with a new coach and now a new regime. And also, keep an eye on something else. The Bears are likely to be sold, I'm told. Virginia McCaskey, George Halas's daughter, has died at the age of 102. And from what I'm told from my cousin, who is a 40-year season ticket holder, the Bears can't afford to pay the inheritance taxes. So they're going to sell the team, and that is going to be a good thing for the fan base that has been under an ownership that's from kind of a prehistoric era, family-owned business. And I'd be interested to see what the take is, because the Commanders sold for $6 billion 2 years ago. The media rights keep going up. The projections are it's going to go maybe double once they reopen in 2019. I could see the Bears being sold for $8 billion. If the Commanders went for 6, they could go for 8. And if the Cowboys ever went up for sale, they would go for north of $10 billion. $10 billion. Just an insane amount of money. And finally, something that with the WNBA draft coming up tonight, something that I found out over the weekend that I'd taken as gospel. Like, you remember Elena Deladon? She just retired. She was 2-time MVP in the WNBA, led the Mystics to the championship in 2019. Remember, she had gone to Connecticut, one of the top recruits in the country, and the story was, she got homesick because of her sister, who's deaf and blind, who she's so close to, and needed to be back in Delaware, and enrolled at the University of Delaware, played volleyball for a year, and then played 4 years of college basketball, and then became one of the great stars in the WNBA. As it turns out, she was struggling with mental health in her senior year of high school, wanted to quit then, was kind of pressured into signing this letter of intent to go to Connecticut. And her family said, look, we'll support you whichever way you go, but you put a lot of work into basketball. Let's try and do this. So she did, stayed for 2 weeks, wasn't for her, struggled, went home, and she said it was not really about her sister. Really good story written by Aaron Edwards in the Post over the weekend. It was more about the fact that she was struggling with her mental health. And she said it was so much so that when she was at Connecticut, she considered ways to possibly tear her own ACL so it would end her season. Imagine that. And, she got back on track, obviously, had a great career at Delaware, and then into the WNBA, where she, I'm sure, will go into the Hall of Fame. But just really an interesting story, and something that we had taken as fact for all those years. Oh, yeah, she was homesick because of her sister. No, it was more that she was really having problems with mental health, as a lot of athletes struggle with, and what we've talked about here with Chris Simon and also the football player at LSU. Just some terrible things. So, again, it's one of those things where if you see a warning sign, take it very, very seriously. Take it very, very seriously. All right, coming up tomorrow Meaning to get to this. We didn't get to it Friday because of Mel popping up at the last minute. But Dan Quinn had some interesting things to say on a podcast that's hosted by Alex Smith, and we will get to that tomorrow and much more. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bram is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.